4. Across sea ice. Hummock. A ridge or pile of crushed sea ice. Hummocks are formed when two areas of ice are pushed against each other by wind or current. They can be more than 100 feet tall and can extend for miles. They were not walking over the smooth ice that freezes over skating rinks and inland lakes, but over rough ice piled and tumbled by wind and water. Pangnasuk's sled had to stop many times so Kuraluk and the cook could chop the ice with heavy picks and axes and make a trail. And it was cold, so cold their hands would freeze in a minute if they forgot and took off their mittens. Pangnasuk wore long fur pants that started at her toes and went up to her waist, a fur shirt with the fur next to her skin, a fur parka with the fur facing out, boots lined with dry grass, and fur mittens. She had to wear goggles, too. Otherwise, the sun and snow would cause snow blindness. Some wore goggles of amber glass. Pangnasuk probably wore Inupiat goggles of wood with thin slits in the eyepieces. Magpie didn't have to wear as many clothes because she rode inside her mother's parka. The travelers walked, then chopped, and were able to travel about 30 miles in the first 2 days. In the afternoons, they stopped in time to build 3 igloot for the night. Each igloo needed a floor, a place where the ice was firm and would not crack and slip them into the ocean. Then, with long snow knives, they cut blocks of snow. They used big blocks for the bottom of the snow house. Snow houses are often round, but on this trip they built square houses. And instead of making a round snow roof, they used their tents. Inside the snow house, along the wall, they built a platform of snow for a bed. They put their fur sleeping robes on the bed and slept with their clothes on. If the ice cracked, they had to be able to move quickly. After the igloo was built, they made a half-circle door to crawl through. When everyone was inside, they closed the door with a block of snow. In Pangnasuk's little house, Kuruk would light the lamp, light the stove, and make tea. They all ate a supper of dried meat and fat called pemmican, biscuits, and tea. After supper, they climbed onto their snow beds and fell asleep. Though they were careful to look for strong ice, they did not always find it. One night, a thunderous crack split the ice under the family's igloo. Their floor was suddenly gone, leaving a lane of dark, cold water. Little Magpie nearly fell in, but Kuruk snatched her up and they rushed outside. The captain gave his igloo to the family for the rest of the night. Maybe Kuruk cradled the children to sleep with a song, but she surely stayed awake until morning listening to the ice crack and groan. Before they could reach the island, the travelers had to cross huge hummocks of jumbled ice, ridges that went straight up, sometimes as much as 100 feet. The captain said they were like a small mountain range. He had never seen worse ice. They could not walk through the ridges. The dogs could not pull the sleds through these hills. They had to use picks and axes to make every step of the trail. Some of the men wanted to quit, but Captain Bartlett pushed them on. He knew they would die if they did not get to the island. Once they worked for 5 days chopping and digging to make a 3-mile path over the mountains of ice. Finally, after 17 days of travel, Kuraluk shouted, "Nuna, Nuna, land, land," and they stepped off the ice onto solid ground and Wrangel Island. 5. The hungry summer. Melting ice. Long days of sunshine cause the ice to break up in the late spring and early summer. The leads of open water become too wide to cross on foot. The ice bridge is gone. The hilly island was about 75 miles long and 30 miles wide. When the people from the Karluk arrived, the island was covered with snow. There were no trees, but many pieces of driftwood on the beach. They looked for the 4 crew members, but never found them. Kuraluk built 3 igloot at a place called Icy Spit. Kuruk worked hard by the fire, drying out boots and stockings. She mended tears and tried to make boots and clothes strong again. After 6 days, when the captain's clothes were dry and his sled dogs were rested, he and Katakotovik left to walk 200 miles across the ice to Siberia. They had to walk fast before the ice bridge across the sea melted. If the captain could get to Siberia, he could telegraph a message for a rescue boat. He said he would come back in the middle of July. He left on March 18th. After the captain and Katakotovik left, 3 of the Karluk people moved 60 miles away to Rogers Harbor so everyone would not be hunting in the same place. They were all trying to solve one big problem: finding enough food for themselves and the dogs. The cat did not work and lived well on scraps. There were no caribou, no reindeer, and few bears. They had enough pemmican to last until summer, but when they ate only pemmican, they got very sick. 2 men at Rogers Harbor died from eating pemmican. They did not learn until later that pemmican had too much dried meat and not enough fat, and so was poison to their bodies. They tried many ways of finding food. Kurraluk hunted every day. In April, he brought in 2 large and 2 small bears to share with the 11 others at Icy Spit. In May, when they moved into tents because their snow homes were melting, Kurraluk found seal. At every meal, Kuruk saved back a part of the food and put it in her tin box for the hungry time, when Kurraluk would not find bird or seal or bear. One day, Kuruk began to be sick from pemmican. Her feet and legs swelled and she had no strength. Pagnasuk took little Magpie and walked along the island looking for food. They wanted to help their mother, but they found nothing. Then Kurraluk brought in 2 seals. They had fresh meat. They made soup. Kuruk began to get strong again. In June, the Inuit family, the carpenter, and a Scotsman called Wee Mac moved to a place on the island called Cape Waring, where there were more birds. They slept in the same tent and ate together at the same fire. 4 of the crew members at Icy Spit moved, too, and shared a tent nearby. 2 went to Rogers Harbor. Near the time of the midnight sun, Pagnasuk and Magpie found a dead owl, and Kuruk made them a stew. Every day they worked to find food for themselves and the dogs. The carpenter and Wee Mac made a chair with rope and pieces of driftwood. Then the carpenter lowered the wobbly chair and Wee Mac over the edge of the cliff. The little Scotsman sat in the chair and collected birds' eggs from cliffside nests. Wee Mac wrote later, "July was a hungry month. We ate seal tails and flippers and sometimes chewed on seal skin. Even when there were only scraps, the others always made sure Pagnasuk and Magpie ate first." In July, Kurraluk decided to build a boat so he could hunt on the water. He used a hatchet to carve the frame from 2 large logs. Then he and Wee Mac used skinning knives to whittle it to the right size. Kurraluk carved a paddle and scraped sealskin for the outside. Kuruk sewed the skins together over the frame with caribou sinew. The day after the kayak was done, Kurraluk went out in it and brought back a walrus. At the end of July, Kurraluk shot 3 ugrik. They feasted on fresh meat and hung some to dry. In 2 months it would be winter again. The captain still had not come. Perhaps he had died on his journey. Perhaps he would never come. If they had to spend winter on the island, they would need much food. For 4 weeks in August, the hunters had no luck. They ate the dried meat they were saving for winter. Some days they ate only soup made from month-old scraps of walrus skin. Pagnasuk may have remembered the Inuit story of magic lamp that could find its own seals for fat to burn and meat to eat, and wished her lamp had such power. But Kurraluk did not wait for a magic lamp. He was a hunter and would not quit. When he had no more bullets for his gun, he practiced throwing sticks. He brought 30 crow bills down with his stick. He caught birds with a net. Pagnasuk and her mother used sinew and a bent pin to catch a fish called tomcod. Magpie and Pagnasuk gathered the tough woody roots of an island plant. Kuruk cooked them every night. The roots made Wee Mac sick, and he couldn't eat them. In early September, the snows began again. Their fur clothes were worn and thin. They did not have enough food for winter. They hoped for the captain, but they looked for food every day. Kuruk and the 2 girls caught more tomcod. One day, Pagnasuk trapped a gull. Her mother made a thin stew. They all worked hard but could not forget the coming cold and days of certain hunger. They did not know if they would see another spring, but little Magpie always said, "We'll be all right." One morning in September, Kuruk, Magpie, and Pagnasuk fished for tomcod and caught enough for breakfast. While they cooked, Kurraluk went to look for food to make a spear. "Umipak, Kana," they heard him say, "big boat down the way." 6. Umiakpakuna, land fact ice, an area of ice connected to coastal land and extending outward. sometimes for many miles. They looked out to sea and saw the first ship they had seen since the Karluk sank 8 months ago. But would the crew on the ship see the small figures and ragged camp on the island? Would they even think to look for people on the island? The carpenter fired his gun. Karluk went running out over the land-fast ice. The Karluk survivors could not know Captain Bartlett had asked these walrus hunters to detour past Wrangel Island and offer emergency help. The ship lowered its sails, and several of its crew went out onto the ice. Weemak the carpenter, Kuruk, Kuralak, Pagnasuk, Magpie, and the others were too hungry to leave the tomcod on the beach. They ate the fish and drank tea before they packed their few belongings. I think they brought the seal oil lamp and the dolls. They left their worn tents on the island, walked across the ice, and climbed onto the ship called the King and Wing. Once on board, they all took baths and ate bread and butter. Captain Bartlett had traveled hundreds of miles, and he had spent much of the summer in Nome looking for a ship to go to Wrangel Island. In July, he found the 50-year-old Bear, but then lost more weeks in failed attempts to get through the Arctic pack ice. In September, the Bear refueled and headed out for one last try before winter. Finally, the day after the rescue, the old ship caught up to the King and Wing. Bartlett greeted the 12 survivors and helped them move over to the Bear, where there was a doctor to tend the sick and frostbitten. He watched Pagnasuk and Magpie carry the black cat onto the ship. After 5 days, they arrived in Nome. Kuruk, Kuralak, Pagnasuk, and Magpie left the ship to start their long journey up the coast of Alaska to Point Barrow and home. And when they arrived, perhaps they lit seal oil lamp inside the sod house, one of the last of the old sod houses, and told their grandmother their story of the boat that sank, the long walk over the ice, the hungry summer. Then they sang the song of home, the wide sky, the sound of the wind, the ptarmigan, and the black cat sat and listened.